Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech. An iOS 26.2 RC or release candidate released a couple days ago, and iOS 18.7.3 RC released as well. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26.2 RC is out what's new video. We'll talk about the latest Apple news, we'll also talk about the overall features, and we'll talk about the experience. Not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page, where at the time of this video there's over 13,000 votes and 178 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the experience is like for all of us, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, Apple announced the podcast of the year this week, along with a few other things, and you can see here on their newsroom website that Apple Podcasts names The Rest is History the 2025 show of the year. They talk about the show. There are quite a few runner-ups as well, but you can see all of the different details here. In addition to this, Apple also announced the App Store Awards this week. So it went along with this where you can see the 2025 App Store Awards. And as we scroll down, you'll see different categories for iPhone App of the Year, where it's TMO. As we scroll down here, iPad App of the Year, with Detail from Detail Technologies, and much more. So Mac App of the Year, Apple Vision Pro App of the Year, Apple Watch App of the Year, and much more. So I'll link this in the description if you want to check it out yourself, see all of the latest games, and the different things that won all of the different apps of the year. A few weeks ago, Apple held a contest to design Christmas trees on iPad to light up the Battersea location in the UK. Apple chose 24 different designs, which are now being projected onto the Apple Store every day until December 24th. So if you're in the Battersea location, you should be able to see those now. A massive change is happening at Apple now, with some major executives leaving. The first is John Giannandrea, who's Apple's Senior Vice President of Machine Learning and AI Strategy. He's retiring in the spring of 2026, according to Apple. On their Apple Newsroom website, you can see here where it says John Giannandrea to retire from Apple. It says Amar Subramanya is joining as the Vice President of AI, reporting to Craig Federighi. So this is a major change, and probably due to maybe them shifting their strategy with AI, maybe utilizing parts of Google's Gemini on their private cloud compute. So this is a pretty big change as he's set to retire. There's also more to this, where the other huge change is even bigger and unexpected. Alan Dye, who was largely responsible for Liquid Glass, is leaving Apple to work for Meta as their Chief Design Officer. He's being replaced by Stephen LeMay, who's been at Apple for many years and worked on the original iPhone team, and some have actually seen this as a huge move since there's been many complaints about Liquid Glass. Many see this as positive, where maybe you want Liquid Glass to go away, or just have it refined where you can have more legibility, and it's just better overall. And while I don't expect Liquid Glass to just disappear, I do expect some changes for the better across the company. So maybe we'll see more refinement. In fact, John Gruber actually posted a fairly scathing review of the overall leaving or departure of him. So we could see some major improvements where he expects, now that he's left, that maybe we'll see things sort of stop getting worse and maybe start to improve. So hopefully we start to see that. Also on Thursday this past week, Apple announced 2 more executives are leaving in 2026. Again, on Apple's newsroom, you can see here where we have a few different people leaving. Kate Adams, who is Apple's Senior Vice President and General Counsel, is leaving, along with Lisa Jackson, who's the Vice President of Environment, Policy, and Social Initiatives. Jennifer Newstead is replacing Kate Adams. Saba Khan will take over for Lisa Jackson's role. So these are some pretty big transitions, along with a couple others this past year, and it looks like quite a few people are leaving. Maybe some major changes are happening within Apple, and maybe this could point at internal shakeups coming this year, with possible CEO and other choices within the company actually changing. So maybe we'll see Tim Cook depart later in 2026, or maybe not, but it looks like some major decisions have changed, people have left, and this is very, very unexpected, especially for the designer leaving. So maybe we'll see some changes to Liquid Glass. I doubt Apple will roll it back entirely, but we could be surprised at what they do this coming year. We're set to get a very sort of stabilizing year, so maybe we'll see it get improved, or maybe they'll do away with Liquid Glass eventually altogether. Now, earlier this week, I talked about how India made demands that all iPhones in India pre-install a state-run security app that you could not uninstall. According to the business standard, Apple is not planning to comply with the order, and then after this, India's telecom minister said that the app would completely be optional and they could easily delete it. So it looks like India changed course. However, just a day or so after that, it seems India wants to enable GPS on all phones for better tracking, making it impossible to turn off. So we'll probably see more about this going back and forth, but at least Apple stood their ground and wanted to keep things private and secure. When it comes to new features this week, well, Apple announced Tap to Pay on iPhone is now available in Singapore. So if you want to use Tap to Pay on iPhone, so tapping to pay on another iPhone, that's now available in Singapore if you live there. In addition to this, Apple Car Keys seems like it's coming to Rivian very soon with a software update on the R1T and R1S model. So this is something that we could be seeing very, very soon. And it's also coming to more Audi vehicles in China, according to back-end code that Mac Rumors found. So that's something I really enjoy, using the Wallet app to actually be my car key. If you've ever used this or seen this with Tesla or other manufacturers, basically you just walk up to the vehicle with your phone and it unlocks. Now with iOS 26.2, there are quite a few different features in it. We'll cover that in depth when it releases to the public, but the major feature has to do with liquid glass, where you can customize it on the lock screen and change the overall opacity. So you can now change it, make it more frosted, make it more liquid, and change it to whatever you'd like. That's definitely a departure from what we thought in the beginning, where you'll see it's reflecting the light. As I change it, you can see that here with the mountain reflecting onto the back there, but overall you can fully customize this however you'd like. We're seeing more and more of this, and whether or not Apple dials back liquid glass or gives us a slider to control it throughout the OS in future versions, we just don't know yet. One of the other major updates should be RCS with encryption. However, so far there's no sign of that. You can do other things such as flash the display along with the flash on the back now for alerts. That's found under accessibility. Scroll down to audio and visual here, scroll to the bottom, and you'll see flash for alerts. Again, it has screen or both, so you can use that. And there's quite a few updates to things such as CarPlay, where you can remove the pins for your contacts. You also have more widget stacks. Freeform adds table support. Again, if we go into settings, scroll down to notifications, scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see there's a new section for enhanced safety alerts. Under this, we have earthquake alerts along with imminent threat alerts and improve alert delivery. This may not be available in every country, but one thing that is expanding to different countries is live translation. For example, it's now available in Europe for Italian, German, and Spanish so far. Also, third-party app stores are now allowed in Japan with the update, along with customization of the Power Sleep Wake button, allowing you to change it to allow for a different assistant. So again, all of those are coming very soon with 26.2, and maybe even more that Apple hasn't announced yet. We also expect some security updates as well. So on Apple's security release website, once they update this and the update is out, we'll then see it updated here with all of the latest security updates. So there should be quite a few new things here for that. When it comes to app updates or releases this week, if we go into Apple's own Books app, then we go over to Bookstore, we now have the best books of 2025, and also the same is true for audiobooks. So you can go into this, see the best audiobooks that they have on the Bookstore here, or the Book app. Now, Apple also carried this across to the Music app as well if you haven't seen it already. You can replay your music story here for 2025. So if you go into this, you can see the replay and see all of the things you listen to most, just like they have regularly now, but this is for all of 2025, and you can select the year going back to 2015 if you were using it then. Also, YouTube pushed out its 2025 year-end recap, and they did it differently this time around, where it recaps it for you specifically, shows you how many videos you've watched, what the different types of videos you watch, and the top channels you watch as well. Now, when it comes to the iPhone 17 this year, well, the iPhone Air resale value has recently dropped up to 50% according to new data published by SellCell. So it seems like many people not only didn't buy this, but even when you try to resell it, the overall resale value is just not that great. So the 17, 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max seem to be much, much better. Also, iPhone 17 models are still selling incredibly well, and a new report from IDC says that Apple is on track to ship more than 245 million iPhones in 2025. So this is a new record, it seems, even though many people don't seem to like the 17 Pro or 17 Pro Max. It seems it's selling better than what people's opinions seem to be about the overall design. They want a new phone, it's a big enough upgrade, and a big enough departure from what we had before that makes it worth it. So the base iPhone 17 is great, the 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max are even better with a few additional features such as the camera, different options for the camera, as well as a larger battery. As far as other releases this week, well, Hypertension updates expanded to more countries. I talked about this in a different video, but one place Apple didn't really announce it was India. Many people have confirmed that if you go into the Health app and you have a supported Apple Watch, so if we go into Health, you now have the option for hypertension notifications. I mentioned before where I had one. I actually had 3, but they were all on the same day. I haven't had another one since I've been able to drop my blood pressure down, but this is something that's great to see expand to more places throughout the world. So it's expanded in other places as well, but India is also included now. Also, Apple released a new iPhone Air MagSafe battery pack update and then pulled it. So if we connect it to the iPhone here on the iPhone Air, it's probably not charged, so we don't have a charge here, but basically just connecting it will allow it to update it. However, they removed the update, but when they did update it, it went from version 9.1.0 or A8A351 to 9.9.0 8B25. But again, they've pulled it. I haven't seen it back yet. So let me know if you were able to get yours to update and if you've had any issues with it. Also, Apple released another update for tvOS, where tvOS 26.2 RC2 released. They didn't release any other RC2s yet, but they released it for tvOS for some reason. Also, iOS 26.2, many people are wondering when we could see that. And if we take a look at what we had last year, we could see it as soon as December 8th, or we could have iOS 26.2 RC2 on the 8th, and a couple days later, we could see iOS 26.2 released to the public. That's what they did last year with iOS 18.2. There's definitely some issues in here that need to be fixed first, so maybe we'll see an RC2 on Monday with a public release maybe on Wednesday, if they follow what they did last year. Either way, I would expect that soon, and then soon after that, iOS 26.3 Beta 1 I would expect as well. Then we'll have vacation at least through the holiday, and Apple will return typically in the second week of January. So maybe on January 5th or 6th, we'll see iOS 26.3 Beta 2 and future updates until then. Then in March is when we're said to get that new Siri update with iOS 26.4. So if the internal changes haven't really changed that release schedule, we could see that as soon as March. Now, when it comes to the overall experience, well, I'm happy to report that the AirPods Pro 3 seem to be working just fine. I've been using them full time when I'm using it with the latest updates. No real issues. It did take a second there to connect, but that typically happens when I have a lot of devices around, and it seems to be working fine. No issues whatsoever. They're working properly. They're disconnecting properly, switching between different devices. I got a phone call. I was using them with the Mac. Recently got a phone call before filming this video. It transferred and went back and forth, no problem. So it's working like you would expect. Battery life with the case definitely seems better since the more recent update. So in general, it's a pretty good improvement. When it comes to the experience of iOS 18.7.3, I have it on this device, and it's been pretty good overall. In fact, many people say it's rock solid based on comments, and performance is optimized with no stutters. You'll see it's very smooth, and I just installed it not too long ago. It's quite smooth, the app library is smooth, and it's what you would expect from Apple. So this is very good overall, and basically many fear that this is the last update for iOS 26 supported devices who decided to stay behind and not upgrade. Hopefully Apple will still make iOS 18 versions for all iOS 18 supported devices going forward, but they typically don't. So this could be the last update. When it comes to the experience of iOS 26.1, well, I've talked about this quite a few times in previous videos. The overall experience is better than iOS 26.0.1 in the initial release of iOS 26, but things are definitely in need of refinement here. The most common issue is stuttering and CarPlay connectivity issues. So in general, it's good, especially on newer devices, but on older devices, it's just a stuttery mess. So it's definitely not without issues, but it seems like it's improving with the newest release. So with iOS 26.2 RC, I've been using it full time on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and generally it's pretty good. There's quite a few things that they've fixed. For example, the overlapping bug in the control center when you go to close it out, and even the ghosting is gone. So they fixed that from iOS 26.1 to 26.2. Also, CarPlay is now working better on the RC version than it did for Beta 3 users. So I've heard quite a few of you say that it's working much better. That's great to hear. Also, RAM management is much better. So if we go back into things such as music or YouTube, it doesn't reload every time. So podcasts I didn't open, but if we go maybe into TV, let it load, go back into music, it's still staying in RAM. So it seems like they've fixed the RAM management issues with the RC as well. It's super smooth now. Animations are nice and smooth, especially on newer devices. And just in general, it's much, much better. So not perfect, but much better. However, there are some bugs worth mentioning. There's quite a few bugs worth mentioning as well, and this was sent in by a viewer, but if you press and hold on the home screen, tap Edit, then maybe go to move a widget around, then tap the buttons for the page on the bottom, it will respring every single time. Then it comes back to your screen. So this is a repeatable bug. I've submitted it in the feedback app, but again, if we do this again, you'll see we'll just drag this around, tap the pages at the bottom, and it resprings every time. So definitely an odd issue. You have to do it in that order, but it's still an issue for sure. Also, some have said that their alarms for reminders are not working. So if you're using reminders, you go to create a new one. So let's go back here. We'll create a new one, and you use the urgent reminder option where you can set an alarm based on date and time. Quite a few people have said it just doesn't work in general. So that's something that people are complaining about. Also, some people are saying that the overall widget page is still slow or laggy when swiping back and forth. Now, this seems to be on iPhone 14 Pro Max and older. I'm not seeing it on newer devices, so it's definitely not doing it here, but is on older ones. Also, there's keyboard issues that still remain. For example, if we go into Notes here, and if I type something such as, "Hi, how are you today?" Sometimes it will mistype even though I'm hitting the correct letter. This was repeated by someone on YouTube where if you press maybe the Y, sometimes it would select T even though it shows you pressing the Y in slow motion. So that's something that's still an issue, along with volume issues for the keyboard as well. So that seems to be an issue for quite a few people. However, like I mentioned, CarPlay is still good for most people, but occasionally there's a few people mentioning that it won't connect properly, but it seems like they've fixed it for the majority of users. If it's still an issue, you may want to try and delete it from your car and re-add it, as I haven't heard many complaints since the RC. When it comes to overall performance, well, on the latest devices, it's quite fast. So just swiping through, going into the app library is fixed, scrolling, everything's nice and smooth. ProMotion is what you would expect. On iOS 18.7.3, the same thing, like I mentioned before. Everything's just super smooth in general. So if we go into the app library and scroll, it's just really smooth. In fact, maybe a little smoother than iOS 26.2. Going into folders, you'll see everything is about the same now. So much, much better overall. When it comes to the overall heat and thermals, well, the phone is staying nice and cool. I even ran Geekbench on it 3 times and it stayed cool. But let's go ahead and run it again. When we're about halfway through, we'll see what the thermals are like. We're about halfway through running benchmarks. Let's go ahead and take a look at the overall thermals. On the iPhone 17 Pro Max running iOS 26.2 RC, at the hottest point, we're around 35 degrees Celsius. On the iPhone 16 Pro Max running iOS 18.7.3, we're at about 34.7 degrees Celsius, and on the iPhone Air running iOS 26.1, we're at about 36.1 degrees Celsius. So I think it's a little bit better across the board overall, but definitely an improvement with the 17 Pro Max and its vapor chamber. When it comes to overall benchmarks, you can see iOS 26.1 on the left, iOS 18.7.3 in the middle, and iOS 26.2 on the right. This is the best score I got earlier today with 3,865 for single core, 10,032 for multi-core. So this is on iOS 26.2 RC, pretty great overall for all of them. Now, if you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.2 RC, I would say it's safe to do so at this point. However, it's going to only be a few days until it releases to the public, so you may want to hold off until then. Either way, if you do install the update, it seems to be fairly stable. Just make sure you have a backup in case you have an issue, as you can only downgrade utilizing a computer. When it comes to overall battery life, let's take a look at that. We'll go into settings, battery health. I'm currently at 100% capacity with 25 cycles. And if we take a look at the usage, you'll see that I still have the ongoing device setup badge. This is going to affect battery life and thermal performance, so it does take a few days for this to go away and complete processes in the background. So this will improve over the next few days. But yesterday I had 3 hours and 17 minutes of screen active time, 5 hours and 42 minutes of screen idle time, and used 58% of the battery. Today it's a little bit worse, but again, it's still processing in the background with 3 hours and 2 minutes of screen active time, 5 hours and 5 minutes of screen idle time, using 73%. My battery is currently at 34%. I used it with Apple CarPlay and a few other things today as well. Now, as far as what you had to say about the overall experience, let's go ahead and take a look at some of your comments. Thomas Van Gorkum said, iOS 26.2 RC performs really great on my iPhone 17 Pro Max. Battery life is also great. iPadOS 26.2 works Also great on my iPad Pro 13-inch M4, although there's lag when opening folders from the app library when you have the clear icons turned on. Dimovradu4938 said, iPhone 17 Pro Max, iOS 26.2. Strong battery life, 7 hours screen on time with 4 hours off, 53% battery consumption. Few bugs here and there, small lag in the home screen, not okay on a last generation phone though. What annoys me the most is the two different keyboards in the apps, the 26 and iOS 18 one. It's time for the devs to ramp up work and deliver with the new keyboard. That Boy Young said, iOS 26.2 RC got my CarPlay working again, Beta 3 disabled it somehow, couldn't locate my vehicle, glad that's fixed. Jaden Lion Media FHA1 said, so far really loving iOS 26.2 RC, rock solid, great battery life, overall really enjoying it. Two main issues that come to mind, the wallpaper bug, which bugs me a lot, and just slow performance while gaming. iOS 18 seemed to really harness the power of iPhone, while gaming, however, iOS 26 seems to make performance worse. Other than that, everything works as expected, and I really enjoy this release. I'm Legendary said, iPhone 14 Pro Max on 26.2 RC. Since iOS 26 came out, I've had very noticeable lag spikes moving between the widget screen to the regular screen. All that seems to be completely gone now in the RC. Overall, very good and smooth. Cody Dunson 2019 says, iOS 26.2 RC has been great for me. It's way faster than 26.1 on my iPhone 11 and 11 Pro. Battery life is okay on iOS 26.2 RC, but could definitely use improvements. Battery life is definitely way better than iOS 26.1 in my opinion. iOS 26.1 so far has been pretty poor, even on my iPhone 14. I'm really looking forward to the iOS 26.2 public release. When it comes to the overall storage, let's compare iOS 26.1 to iOS 26.2. So we'll go to General, then iPhone Storage, give it a moment to load, then we'll scroll to the bottom, and you'll see on the left we have 20.28 gigabytes for iOS 26.1 compared to 23.01 gigabytes. So with 26.2, I'm using a little bit more storage with Apple Intelligence, but 23.01 overall. You'll see system data is quite large on iOS 26.1 and about half the size on 26.2. But keep in mind this is cache data, goes up and down as needed, so there's not really a reason to take a look at this at all. So I would really ignore this unless you don't have enough storage to install apps or updates. Now, when it comes to all the current versions, iOS 18.7.3 is currently the safe haven. It gets an A+ grade as it remains the smoothest and most predictable version of iOS currently available. Performance is flawless for many, and those holding out for a better version of iOS 26 are enjoying the experience, so many people are hesitant to upgrade as the experience is generally smooth and just very nice overall. With iOS 26.1, well, it's currently the stutter epidemic. It gets a D+ as far as the overall grade, and initially it was much better than iOS 26.0.1, but still suffers from issues such as lag and stuttering, especially on phones we don't expect it on with the new iPhone 17 models. The update is also not optimized, it seems, for older devices, with the experience feeling much slower overall due to liquid glass and how graphic intensive it is on older devices. iOS 26.2, though, is the redemption update. It gets an A- so far, as iOS 26.2 is being hailed as the savior of iOS 26 by many of your comments. So far, it addresses the primary complaints of iOS 26 and is restoring faith in the new version of the OS. However, the lag is largely gone, CarPlay issues are resolved, and for the most part, battery life is much better just after a couple of days. So it seems to be much better, but hopefully it stays that way as we use it over the next few weeks. So that's everything with iOS 26.2 RC, iOS 26.1 is almost gone, and iOS 18.7.3 is almost here as well. I'm looking forward to the latest versions as it seems like it's finally much better than it was earlier on, and seems to be staying that way at least so far. Let me know your experience with iOS 26.2 in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.